Ladies and gentlemen, let me open a Planning and Zoning Commission City Council meeting, and which is called a joint special meeting. If anybody needs to flip over, we're doing this a little out of sequence tonight, but we are doing the joint special meeting. And now we'll call that order to order for the Council Planning and Zoning Commission. Mr. Chairman, would you check for the roll call?
Mayor, all members are present except for Thomas Duncan.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving to item number 3, roll call for item number 2, roll call for City Council. We are here in our missing person right at the present. We'll be here in just a few minutes. He stepped out. He was running just a little late, but he will be here, so we do have an entire council tonight. Item 4 is introduction of the agenda and format of the hearing for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The format for tonight's meeting, there will be a call to order for each hearing. The staff will make a report, followed shortly by the applicant's presentation. Then there will be an opportunity for public comment in either support or opposition to. Please come forward to the microphone over to the left. Please state your name and address clearly for the record. Be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame, and complete a speaker's card and give it to the recording secretary, which they will be seated over here. Followed by that, there will be council, commission, and staff discussion, and then an adjournment. So for the joint special meeting, the actions that the city council can take are to either approve the request as presented, approve it with conditions, deny the request, or table the item to a future council meeting where additional information would be gathered. So on tonight's meeting, at the joint public hearing, we'll have the Unified Development Code. At the for the joint special meeting, which is what we're going into right now, we will have the 2100 block of Highland Meadows Drive for a intermediate school. That completes our report.
Okay. Moving in our agenda, item 5. I will formally open the joint special meeting and ask the chairman of the Planning Commission to read this into the record.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request by Jim McSherry, representing GPD Group, applicant on behalf of Pasadena Independent School District owner, for approval of a conditional use permit, CUP, to allow for an intermediate school on 26 acres of land located within the single-family residential 1 district R1. The general location is the 2100 block of Highland Meadows Drive.
That completes, okay. Moving in the agenda, and I'm following the agenda probably you have in hand. Item A is application information and case summary. Item A is staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow an intermediate school on 26 acres of land located within the single-family residential 1 district, also known as R1, to be located in the 2100 block of Highland Meadows Drive in the Riverstone Ranch development. School district proposes to develop approximately 160,000 square feet, 2-story intermediate school to serve approximately 1,200 7th and 8th grade students. The proposed occupancy of the school will begin in August 2021. Public school is permitted within the R1 district with a conditional use permit. However, the UDC, the Unified Development Code, requires non-residential uses such as schools, churches, etc. within residential districts to abide by the standards of the Neighborhood Service Zoning District. Staff has received 4 letters of opposition and 1 neutral letter and 0 letters of support of the request. We've also received multiple phone calls inquiring about the request. We have a stack of those letters. We passed them around here a few minutes ago. You can take a chance to look at them. This is the zoning map, and it shows the property zone R1, and it's surrounded by R1 from the north and west and south, and the R4 from the south and southeast, from the east and southeast. This is an aerial photo, and it shows that the school will be surrounded by the Riverstone Ranch residential subdivision to the north and west, the Green Tea Terrace single-family homes to the northeast, and the Green Tea Terrace townhomes to the east and southeast. This is the future land use map, and it shows the property designated as low-density residential. The comprehensive plan's land use policy states that schools, parks, and community facilities may be located close to or within residential neighborhoods if they are separated by a buffer. So the proposed use is compatible with the comprehensive plan. This is the proposed site plan on the screen, and it reflects the development of the school site as a two-story school building with surface parking and one football field and drainage facilities. Also, according to this proposed layout, the primary access for the school will be to the northwest corner of the property along Highland Meadows Drive. There will be also one emergency access to be connected to the east through the Green Tea subdivision. I do have a few slides here provide. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to kind of move the slides here. But anyway, the proposed use is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, and it's accessible to city utilities. And the property is currently unplatted, and the applicant is working with the city to submit a final plat for the property. The proposed site does not conform to the thoroughfare plan. The school site will, as I mentioned, it will be accessed from Highland Meadows Drive, which is designated as a local road, via Riverstone Ranch Drive and Riverstone Falls Drive, which are designated as minor collector streets. I wish if I had that rendering for the entry, the main entry of the school, so I can show it on the screen. And there's also a photo of the emergency access that will be provided towards the Green Tea subdivision. The Unified Development Code establishes 7 criteria for approval of a conditional use permit, and staff that found that the proposal is generally in conformance with these criteria, except for one, which that indicates that the proposed improvement will generate pedestrian and vehicular traffic, which may be hazardous or conflict with existing and anticipated traffic in the neighborhood. I do have that rendering showing the front entry of the school that will be fronting on Highland Meadows. Go to the next slide. And these photos are provided by the applicant. It shows that access to the Green Tea subdivision will be gated and controlled by the fire department, and it's only going to be for emergency access. Staff recommends, here's the conformance table, and it shows that the plan, the proposed use is in conformance with the comprehensive plan, with the Unified Development Code, and as I mentioned, the property is currently not platted, but the applicant is in the process of submitting a final plat. The property is also has access to utilities, and if there are any extension or oversizing of those utilities, that will be borne by the district as the project moves along. The plan doesn't conform to the thoroughfare plan, and as I mentioned, because of the fact that it will be accessed from Highland Meadows Drive, which is a local street, Riverstone Ranch, Fall, and the Riverstone Ranch Drive. Those are designated as minor collectors. Go to the next slide. These are the criteria, the 7 criteria for for approval of a conditional use permit. As I mentioned, they meet all 6 criteria of the 7, except one, which is the one that generates traffic, pedestrian and vehicular traffic to the neighborhood. Staff recommends approval of the requested CUP for intermediate school with the following conditions. Number 1, access. The primary access to the school shall be located along Highland Meadows Drive, and access via Country Club shall be limited to fire and emergency access only. And this access also need to be acquired. Actually, both access need to be acquired by the school district. As far as the stacking, staff recommended that based on the assumption from the TIA that all vehicular stacking must be located within the site and shall not be on the roadway. For traffic, the TIA must be approved by the city engineering department, and all traffic-related improvements and adjustments recommended by the TIA must be implemented by the school district before occupancy. As far as buffering and screening, a minimum 25-foot landscape buffer with shade trees at a minimum of 2 inches to be located at a spacing of every 50 feet, and ornamental trees at a minimum of 2 inches offset from the shade trees to be located between the shade trees and must be provided along the school perimeter adjacent to all residential use properties. Tree species must be approved by the city urban forester. And as far as lighting, the outdoor lighting within the athletic fields, parking areas, or mounted from the building shall be provided in a way to minimize nuisance to the adjacent residential properties. Outdoor lighting within the parking areas and around the building shall be shielded and directed downwards away from the residential properties. All outdoor lighting will be at a maximum height of 20 feet. That will conclude the staff report.
That completes your report.
That is correct.
Okay. Moving to item number B, applicant presentation. Is the school district here?
Mayor, we have 4 people that wish to speak on this
Okay.
item.
Excuse me.
Before we
Well,
call them up, we did have 4 citizens that sent in comment cards, public comment forms. The primary concerns correlate with the conditions that staff put on approving this, the effect on property values, traffic and noise additions.
We need to complete this. We'll have the applicant make their presentation. See.
And the lighting from the athletic fields. And then the buffer zone that landscape would provide. I'll call you up in the order in which we received these.
Mayor Pro Tem Little, if we could, item B on the agenda is actually the applicant presentation prior to the person speaking
Okay.
before and against. So if we could let the applicant do their thing, who knows, it might influence some of those public comments.
The sequence on our agenda is applicant first, people speak later. Are you the applicant? Please, podium's yours. I wanted to make a comment before you start. I think it's kind of interesting. Back in 1920s and 30s time frame, the State Education Commission defined and established borders of independent school districts in Texas. And as Pearland, when the process where we started annexing to complete our 70 square mile footprint, we overlaid 6 independent school districts, Pasadena being one of them. So I thought it was kind of interesting that just a bit of history and something for you to start with. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak tonight.
Give us your name and address if you would.
My name is Jim McSherry, and I'm with GPD Group, and we're an architecture education firm, and we're located in the Galleria area. And what I'd like to do is just reiterate the site plan issues, and I think we've addressed the items that you have on your exceptions. And if you look to the northwest corner or you can see the entrance to that's the bus parking that takes you to the backside. And then we have traffic coming in from automotive traffic coming in. And we want to emphasize that the plan is to not have any stacking cars on Highland Meadows Drive. The way we've designed that parking lot, if you see where that curve goes in, that's actually stacks cars 4 deep. And what that does is that allows, we can get almost 150 cars in that area. And then also I want to emphasize on Wexford Street that is only going to be for emergency access only. It'll be gated, it'll be keyed, and the only people that will have access to that will be police, fire, and ambulance. And then also, if you look over on the right-hand side, you see Champion Drive, and you can see the dark green is all wooded area. We're planning on preserving the existing woods that are in that area. And also, I wanted to let y'all know that the playfield, we are not planning on lighting it at this time. And we will comply with the parking lot requirements to meet all the City of Pearland. And also, we've been working with the urban forester to determine the landscape requirements and making sure we comply with all those as well. Again, I would like to thank you for letting us present, and really appreciate. We've been working very well with your staff and to try to get all this straightened out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving to item C on our agenda, Councilmember Little.
Okay, got a little ahead of myself. I'll call you up in the order I received your form. First person wishing to speak on this agenda item is David Smith. Please come up to the podium. Limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. And give your name and address, please.
My name is David Smith. My address is 2314 Champion Drive. And they address most of our concerns with the noise and the lights. I still was curious, will the entire site be fenced? I know we're putting a gate for the emergency access, but is that going to prevent people from swinging around the back and having their children cut through around the gate to pick them up? That's one of the things that's concerned about extra traffic. Instead of driving around to Highland Meadows, that's a long way, a lot of traffic. Are they going to try to shortcut that? So that was my main concern.
Thank you, sir. Elizabeth Drake. Please state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining.
My name is Elizabeth Drake, and I live at 2216 Kingston Canyon Trail, Pearland, Texas 77089. I live in Riverstone Ranch. Our subdivision is off of Highland Meadows, and my concern is what they don't show you is this looks like the road in front is a straight road running east, west, north, south, whatever direction it has. It actually isn't. It's in a curve, a 90-degree curve. So as you're approaching this area, you can't see whichever direction you're coming around that curve. You can't see this direction, or if you're coming this way, you can't see that direction. And that's what they don't show you. And it's a very small access point. If you want to put the map up, the geo map, so see the 90-degree turn? You see it? So we're talking of having access basically right in the middle of that 90-degree bend. And I think that, you know, that's a serious concern. Obviously, the other concern is that Highland Meadows is becoming a major thoroughfare. And as Riverstone Ranch continues to grow even further west down Highland Meadows, there's going to be a whole nother section. They're developing it now. And if anybody's been in Riverstone Ranch in the new sections, you can see that we have very limited access. We have one way in and we have one way out. It's So if you're all the way down Highland Meadows, the only way to get out is you have to go all the way out, which is like the gentleman saying is that it's a long way. If you live in Green Tea and your child goes to this school, it's a long way to get there. Because you've got to go all the way around and come in. We have very limited access in this neighborhood, which brings me to my third concern, and that is emergency response. And I do know a lot about emergency response, and I also know that if you look to see, I know we have a new fire station, but the old fire station is 3.4 miles away. Takes 11 minutes to get to that area. The new #1 fire station is 3.3 miles away. It takes 10 minutes. And again, that's because of all the traffic, and we have limited access. Our neighborhood doesn't access into Pearland Parkway. It doesn't access into Green Tea. It accesses off of Hughes Road. So #3 fire station's 4.8 miles away, and it's 12 minutes. So the National Fire Protection Agency Code 1710 response time goal for 90% of incidents, this is fires, the first engine company should be at the fire in 5 minutes and 20 seconds.
Ma'am, time's up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Elizabeth Michlichek, is that you? Elizabeth Alexander. Give your name and address, please, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you're at 30 seconds.
Excuse me. My name is Elizabeth Alexander Michlichek, and I am here to speak on behalf of my parents, Stephen and Michael Alexander, who are out of state and unable to attend. They reside at 2401 Champion Drive in Pearland, and their property will be adjacent, will be directly impacted. They wrote to the City of Pearland and asked me to attend tonight and read their letter to ensure their concerns were heard. And I believe that you did address all of these, but out of respect for my parents, I'm going to go ahead and read it for them. They write, after studying the proposed plans and consulting with a licensed civil engineer, overall we find the project to be well thought out. At this moment, our position is that we are neutral with our support and opposition. We believe there are solutions that can satisfy our concerns and position us to the positive bracket of support for the application. Our concerns/suggestions are these: lighting of the athletic fields, south field nearest the school building. If lighting is proposed, limit the height of the poles and ensure lighting fixtures eliminate glare. North field, we request this field not be lit due to its proximity to adjacent homes. Landscaped treatment at the jogged north property line adjacent to our property. Note that the current city-owned pump station is scheduled for demolition before the subject project is completed, and the school property line would then possibly abut directly to our property line. Specifically at the north property line, at the jog, adjacent to the Champion Drive dead end, we request the same shade trees and ornamental tree plantings Candace that is proposed where the school property directly abuts residential property, which, if my understanding was, so I can tell them that wooded area is not going to be disturbed, correct? So that their last thing was, in addition, we would like to work with the staff to further landscape treatment directly at that dead end Champion Drive, but that would be obsolete. It sounds like you've addressed that. Can I say one more thing? As the fire department, I come down Hughes Road every day.
30 seconds.
Okay, there is a small volunteer fire department that's right there. I mean, I don't think it's 3 miles. I think it's pretty close. But I don't think it's the City of Pearland. It's Houston. Okay, that's all. Thank you for your time and your respectful consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against? Have you completed one of these forms, sir? Lance Botkin?
Give my 30 seconds. My name is Lance Botkin. I live at 3701 Pine Forest Place. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother and father who live at 2416 Country Club Drive. My mom's out of town. You know, it's very tough to put a school in certain places. And as I studied this for about a week or so, I noticed several things. That this is a 7th and 8th grade campus. It's a junior high campus. There's going to be a lot of activities going on. There's not a whole lot of access to this, and it proposes a logistic nightmare sometimes. And going on with what the young lady said before about the curve and getting in and out of where we are right here, I don't think it was very well thought out. As a school board member, it's very difficult to find land to put schools if you have to build a school. However, when you just find a piece of land and shove it in a neighborhood, in the middle of a neighborhood to the far right, you would have to think to yourself, am I going to have opposition from 2 different cities or 2 different school districts? And so as I look this from a 30,000 point view, I look down and go, okay, we found some property and we're going to look at it and let's try and shove a junior high. Elementary school, I could probably see possibly going there, but they don't need an elementary school, they need a junior high. As a former attendant of Thompson Intermediate School, I don't think this is the right placement. My mom and I don't think it's the right placement for a particular school to shove in and try and make it fit because of all the flow, the issues, the possibility with emergency, the traffic is going to bring to the subdivision, and it's right next to my mom's back of my mom's home. And I know there's a little bit of buffer trees and so on and so forth, but that does not always prevent from the activity that's going on there. And junior high is pretty active. So my name is Lance Botkin, I live at 3701 Pine Forest Place. And my mom, Linda Botkin, lives at 2416 Country Club Drive, both in Pearland. We both adamantly oppose the building of this junior high. We know you're making a decision tonight whether to move it forward. So we adamantly oppose that. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this? Okay. You need to fill one of these forms out, but you can come on up. One at a time, please. State your name and address and limit your comment to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds.
My name is Charles Coe. I live at 2316 Champion Drive, Pearland, and adjacent to the said property here. My concern is more in the area of flooding. Didn't see any detention ponds showing on their plat. That property is lower than any of the other properties around it. Over in that Merited subdivision, it's a good 6 to 8 feet higher than the property that they want to build these schools on. All the other things about the lighting and so forth, I don't have any problem with that. I'm more concerned with flooding. Our subdivision flooded during Harvey like most other ones around here, and it's been flooding every time we get a heavy rain since Merited's cleared and to build all their homes over there. Generally, we get a heavy rain, we usually end up with water in the street, which is no particular problem. It's, again, if they would have some detention ponds in those areas to control the drainage off that property, we don't think we'd have any problem with that. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, sir. Come on up, sir. So be sure to complete one of these forms. State your name and address, please, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds.
My name's Tom Huddleston, 2604 Antrim. I am one of the properties just the other side of a drainage ditch, not shown on the plats. My concerns are like others, the visual ugliness that I personally feel about a school that close to me. But just logistically, this proposed campus doesn't make any sense looking at the Pasadena ISD boundaries. This is the, pardon me if I don't get the directions correct, southwest corner of the extreme southwest corner of the Pasadena Independent School District boundaries. There's essentially no property past that point that's going to flow into this school. That this will be 1,200-ish students coming to this campus bust to get there through this residential neighborhood, Riverstone, not even my neighborhood, but my heart goes out to them because that's a lot of busing coming your way. And it's going to be traffic, and trying to get in and out of that neighborhood behind a string of buses is befuddling to me why that it's even a thought process. That campus needs to be built, but more strategically. The Kroger property, if they were a good citizen to the community, they donate that property for this purpose. I had another thought, but I'm getting old, so I forgot. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak? Come on up, ma'am. Sir, be sure to fill out one of the forms. Give your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. I'll let you know when you have 30 seconds.
My name's Christina Scott. I live at 2909 Green Tea Drive. I'm further down from Country Club, but I'm on the Clear Creek side. I'm a new house. I'll be 7 years next month. As the city knows, for green tea, when building a house, you cannot bring dirt in. You have to build a pond. I have a pond in my backyard. I have 3 acres. So I built above what the city required for flooding. I have a floodway and a flood zone. So during Harvey, I'm sitting up above, but water did come up, did not flood me, but I was stranded in my home for 4 to 6 days. Could not move. My husband and another gentleman went and rescued people out of their house in green tea. Building this puts both of our subdivisions at huge risk. There's no place for the water to go. There's no place to put a pond, I guess. And flowing it down or building the school up and flowing it down is just going to flood both subdivisions out. So that's my concern. I don't want to have to rescue any more people. Not that we'll get another Harvey, but we just had some rain a couple of weeks ago, and the creek was already full. So, and I know y'all digging it out, and I appreciate that. But that creek flooded into my neighbor's pond, into my pond, in the whole neighborhood. So, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak for or against this resolution?
Okay. Moving in our agenda to item B, which is Planning Commission, City Council, and the staff participate in discussion of this particular issue. Moving in item A, Planning and Zoning Commission, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. Mary, you first.
I'm just not sure. I thought, I can't find it. I want to know if there is a detention area in this plan someplace. Yes.
The answer to your question, ma'am, is yes, there are two large detention ponds on the property. If you look above the kind of the
Oh,
wings,
there it is. Okay.
in between those two driveways, there's a large detention pond. It's actually 10 feet deep at its lowest point. And then if you look to the right of the playfields, there's another large detention pond. I want to say that's about 6 feet deep.
Okay. What kind of safety prevention is to keep the kids out of the ponds?
We are specifying a ornamental iron fence around that property.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, I guess my primary concern in looking at this, and I drove out today to try to get an idea of really what we're talking about, has been traffic circulation. I think my concerns were the access from Wexford off of Country Club and how they were going to handle the traffic on the other streets within the subdivision. I think they've addressed all of my concerns. I think that in looking at it, it would have been nice if we had had more planning that went in before the subdivision was developed or early on in the subdivision development and the picking the spot for the school. But I think under the circumstances, they have addressed the concerns that I had.
Laney?
This may seem silly, but no one's mentioned this, but I'm concerned about the gate in front of emergency vehicles. Someone said they'll all have a key, but if it's a fire or a matter of life and death, they have to stop and open the gate to get to the person every time. That's crazy to me, and it worries me. Everything else, everybody else has said, the flooding and all that. And also 7th and 8th graders that's a hard age, and having them walking to school and all through the neighborhood, if that's going to happen, I would not want to live by this school. I'm not unless you.
Opportunity for public comment has since passed, sir. It had to be during the public comment portion of the agenda. Sorry.
And those are my comments. Thank you.
No comments. I guess the only comment I have is now having experienced these schools and the traffic flows to and from, how the traffic is proposed to be stacked in the parking lot. I can't see 4 lanes of parents picking up their kids in the afternoon, merging together into one to pick up at the door. That to me is reason enough to say no, because that's almost insane. We can't seem to get 2 different directions of traffic to get along well enough with each other to enter the pickup line. The question I had on traffic as well is, how wide is Highland Meadows Drive? Is that a 25-foot? I would be real surprised if stacking didn't occur on that road, no matter how well you planned for it. Like some of the comments, I don't see that this property is the right fit for this school. I could see it as an elementary school property and work, but I can't see it as this. So I would be opposed and recommend denial. Any further comments from the commission? No further comments, Mayor.
That completes your comments, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Moving to item B, which is City Council. And starting with Councilmember Alondo.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Councilmember Reed.
No comments, Mayor.
Councilmember Little. No comment, Mayor. Councilmember Hernandez.
Just to maybe echo off some of the comments we've already heard. I originally came in here concerned about the traffic issues. Just kind of seeing where it is. I pulled up Google Maps and kind of looked at it. I see there's an elementary school already. So that's already traffic coming in. I'm assuming that's a different start time though. Maybe if you can, yeah. How, okay. Do you have any, I don't know how different, I don't have kids, so I don't know how different elementary schools are from intermediate schools as far as the impact of traffic and things like that in the neighborhood. I don't know if you've got any way to kind of appease my current opposition, but.
Hi, my name's Shauna Gagno. I'm project manager for Pasadena ISD. And they do stagger the bus
Would you move closer to the microphone?
They do stagger the times when different campuses arrive and depart. Sometimes they will schedule more around if they see that there's some traffic issues. We do have a traffic engineer online, and we do a report, and we abide by the report. I can understand you saying about the even the best planning could still have some stacking that goes outside. I'll also note that the 4 lanes that you were mentioning, that people not so much taking turns even on a regular day, much less 4 lanes. The campus does, they have several of the teachers and volunteers that help direct that traffic. And we do find that obviously the first couple of weeks of school or a new plan is a little bit of a nightmare. And but we find that once the parents kind of learn the routine and what they're supposed to do, it actually isn't that much of a problem. And as was mentioned, we do have the 2 large ponds. That's also designed per code, and we will have a fence around the entire property. So as far as for people trying to skip in the back way, and then the gate, if there's like a true emergency, they'll bust through it. They won't stop. So that's more of just to keep parents out, because if you don't have the lock on it, they'll open it themselves and just come through that other entrance. We definitely don't want that.
So with regards to one of the gentlemen that gave his comments, had mentioned the fact that it's kind of on the corner of the district.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that the majority of students are going to come from kind of all over. I mean, it's not this particular area, but I guess they're going to come from one side pretty heavily.
Yes.
Which might cause traffic, on some streets more than others, I suppose, because it's all.
Well, and that's why I think the not entering the site from the other streets is trying to, try to funnel it in the one direction. But in all honesty, yes, you're right, the access to the site is limited. And we went off of recommendation. And I can say the property was purchased back in 2012. So you're right. I mean, there should have been a lot better coordination with the actual developer and what we could have gotten access. Once the developer had more houses around and realizing what we were dealing with, in 2015, they were looking to swap properties or land with other entities, and they weren't able to find something comparable that the district could afford. So in 2015,
so there is an identified need for an intermediate school, but you're saying you don't have any Plan Bs at this particular point?
no, because in 2015 they had been working again to try to find a different location that they could do a land swap with, basically, and the developer wasn't agreeable to that.
Okay.
So
theoretically, if you got a no tonight, you would have to have a Plan B. What would that be?
I think it would end up in either an eminent domain situation or Because again, they didn't find the property within the Riverstone Ranch area.
Okay.
To go through, so.
Okay. I just wanted to see. All right, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
But actually, the gentleman that mentioned that Kroger would donate the property, I wouldn't mind talking to you, because if we can swap over to a more desirable place that doesn't cause all the headaches, that's great, you know, to reach out to them if that's.
That track's not in your district.
Okay.
Councilmember Hernandez, in response to your question, I wanted to add some additional information, whether it be for council or for the public, but to set expectations accordingly. Although the Unified Development Code requires a conditional use permit for schools in this particular zoning district, Texas courts have long ruled that allowing a city to dictate where and what a school district could build on property would defeat the school district's powers of eminent domain. And as the architect representative of the school said, the plan B would be to use eminent domain. Really, the focus of tonight's discussion isn't on whether this location, the school could locate here. It's if the school is going to locate here, what do we need to do in regards to adjacency issues? Whether that be the concern that several folks talked about with detention, whether that be the lighting at the ball fields, or whether that be the access. And really, I think the biggest issue is access, and they're still working with the engineering department on making sure that they ensure that access to that school district is appropriate for the population there. I don't want to step on engineering's toes or anything like that, but I believe that that was mentioned inside the staff report.
Thank you for the clarification. So with that being said, I would like to make sure that as part of the conditions that we make sure we have it so that they cannot light that field. Is that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. There could be a motion to include that as one of the conditions to make sure that that ball field or any of the sports fields on campus are not lighted. And I think staff had several proposed recommendations, not just for that ball field, but also for other lighting. Sometimes at schools, it could be a little bit bright around it, and we want to, while the school is in the community around the school is who lives there, and we need to be good neighbors, and they need to be good neighbors with them.
And Mayor, if I may, just correct me if I'm wrong. The school owns this land, right? Yeah. And so, how long have you owned the land? Okay. And I'm assuming a lot of these residents have been here longer than 2012. But you know, I know specifically there's other areas of town where you know, residents have come and bought land after the fact, and or even before the fact, and then they get notice that something is going to be built there. And so I'm sure that process took place. I thought we were deciding on whether or not the school goes there, but how we can accommodate both sides. That seems to make way more sense, especially when we're up here and we've approved liquor stores, we've approved vape shops, we've approved a whole lot of crap, and to tell a school they can't be there. I mean, I think that if we look at this, and just like we did, you know, a couple months ago with the house situation, where you know we found a different way to make the parties work together. You know, there should be some kind of way. I think Councilmember Hernandez mentioned the lighting, or somebody just mentioned the lighting, and so there's if there's ways that we can make this work, because obviously, and I thought that I definitely knew what Lawrence just said. I mean, eminent domain would take place then, so there was no question to me that the school was going to go there. I thought it was, hey, how can we make amends to make it, you know, to where it works out for these residents, to where they don't have to have the worry of, you know, noise, traffic, that kind of thing. So, anyways, I just wanted to put that out there. And when when Councilman Hernandez asked his question, it sounded like he was saying, "Oh, well, can you go somewhere else?"
Yeah, I was trying to identify if saying no would create a hardship, and it sounds like it will, obviously. So, I mean, that is a big consideration for me. And then on the detention pond, I'm looking. I just wanted to make sure that there was some type of a barrier around that. Because I see something. I just wasn't sure if that was.
From the school district, because it is a recorded proceeding, we need you to step up to the microphone. Thank you.
Yes, sir. There's ornamental fencing around both detention ponds.
Okay, and it's secure so that, you know, kids can't get in and?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The only person that will have access to the gate will be the maintenance department of the
All right.
district.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
More?
Thank you, Mayor. Just in response, there was something mentioned about lighting, and you said the field wouldn't be lighted at this time. Is there ever a plan to light it? Okay. And what's the student count that would be here? 150, is that right?
The student count is 1,200.
1,200. I don't know where I got 150. That's why I was like, that's a really small school.
That was the stacking space for the cars.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Got several questions. So one, I'm just going to say, look, the history of this site is that we've kind of approved the use several times. And to those in the audience, there was a master plan that included, for Riverstone Ranch, that included this tract being a school. That was approved by Planning and Zoning Council going back 12, 13 years, and there's been a couple of amendments that have showed this as a school site. So when they purchased it with the expectation that this was going to be a school site, and negating the legalities of whether, how effective our conditional use permit could be. I somewhat disagree with the assessment, but Member Reed's a lawyer; he knows it better than I do. But I think we still have some leverage here if we chose not to do that. But I feel like we're disingenuous to the school and disingenuous to the developers and disingenuous to the neighborhood if we've approved it at least 3 times and now say no, particularly after they purchased the property. It leaves them in quite a conundrum. But with the conditional use permit, we can allow them to take some extra measures beyond what our normal code would require to help mitigate some of your concerns. Y'all are saying right now that you're not going to light the fields currently. Do you have any plans to, in the future, light the fields?
No, we'll not light the fields. District standard is to not have them lit.
Would you object to us putting a condition on here that no lighting can be on those fields?
Not at all.
Okay, so when we get to that point, I think I would add a motion that there can be no lighting on this field. I'd also probably add to that there can be no more than 1 foot candle intensity at any of the property lines. That way, no matter what you do with your lighting, it doesn't affect any of the neighbors' houses. And then obviously you'll have to do a photometric to be able to prove that to staff. My biggest concern is coming in and out. Look, I'm in this arena. I'm dealing with developers and school districts quite often. I know that can be a tenuous relationship. I imagine this is not ideal for y'all. But we do have local streets with buses. And it's got to take a 90-degree turn to get in and out. That's not ideal. I don't know who did your TIA. I would like us to at least take a look at what that turning radius is at the intersection to ensure that there's not improvement needed there to make sure that the buses can make that movement. I'd also like us to entertain the idea of at least a corridor along the frontage of that of the school, or some fair distance past that where we have no parking signs. Because if you have overnight parking and on both sides of the road and the buses are trying to get in there, they're not going to get through.
Yes, sir.
So I think that, one, if we add that condition, y'all should have to pay for the signs along with all the other school signage. But I think that's, Robert, if that's something we can incorporate if we have not already.
We do have a meeting set in about a week and a half with your traffic department and with our traffic engineers. And obviously we'll comply with whatever extra is needed, necessary.
I mean, I would almost venture to say from Riverstone Ranch Drive, from Highland Meadows Drive, from Riverstone Ranch all the way over to Whisper Manor, or possibly just at least to the boundary of the school, or maybe 50 feet beyond the school. There just can't be any parking and overnight parking in there. It's not really conducive to that because it doesn't have any driveways on it. But if, like I said, it's a curve. It's got if you have large buses, I think one car parked on that street is going to prevent y'all from being able to get through. Particularly if you've got a car coming in the opposite direction, you're going to shut things down. And then we're going to have to monitor it. I mean, I'm concerned long term. We're going to be holding the bags for some traffic improvements out there if we have some severe congestion after y'all been CO'd. So maybe that's something we can look at as far as leverage in the future is how do we make improvements to that road if it's needed and have the school district contribute to that.
Yes, sir.
The other concern I have is it's an intermediate school. I imagine y'all have a PTO or a PTA. Plan to have that. They have events. Y'all are going to have events.
Yes.
Basically your entire drive lanes are all fire lanes. That means that when you overpark, you have nowhere to park them.
Right.
So when there is a school event, like every school, you're going to exceed your parking limit. So we need to have a plan for where overflow parking goes. I think that possibly going in and putting in some kind of, pardon me, some kind of stabilized subgrade with a grass field or something where we allow overflow parking with a 4-inch rollover curb. Allow some place for those cars to go when you have a PTO event, when you have a PTA event, when you have a band event, multicultural night, whatever you have. I mean, the schools just have them routinely now that overflow these and have them not overly congest these subdivisions.
And we do plan for that quite often.
Okay. I would like to add that as a condition to the approval. At least have your traffic engineer come up with an estimate of required parking for events based on real data, based on events that y'all have hosted at other similar sized schools and what that overflow traffic has been, and then come up with a parking count and find out where we're going to put them.
Yes.
Because I would hate to see on a Thursday night that nobody can get into their subdivision because there's cars stacked on both ends. Or we have to bring the fire marshal out, as we've had to do with other schools, and ticket or tow cars out of the fire lane.
Yes.
On the pond, you're the architect or the engineer, sir? Can I borrow you for a second? S&G is your engineer?
S&G is the civil engineer, yes.
Okay. I don't want to put this as a condition, but I know that the typical standard is you convey the 3-year and attain the 100-year. That's not good enough here. We need to convey the 100-year into the pond. If they haven't planned for that already, we need to make sure that there is no sheet flow in extreme events. You've got a building generally blocking a good part of your site from a good part of your detention. If that's not planned for with underground conveyance, then the water's not going to get there and it's going to get into the houses.
Yes, sir. There is a drain connection from the one pond to the other pond.
Yes, sir. The connections, I agree, probably happen, but what they're sized to convey is what I'm concerned about.
We have been working with the city in regards to that, and I think we've got you accommodated, but we will verify that.
Okay. Please make sure your engineer is conveying the 100-year vent in the pipe without any overflow or sheet flow drainage.
Yes, sir.
To the point about the floodplain, I can't remember the gentlewoman that had mentioned that, if she's still here. So just to address your concern, it is in the floodplain. The whole area is in the floodplain. What they're required to do per our ordinance is they have to elevate the building above the floodplain at least 12 inches above the 100-year floodplain elevation, and every square foot of fill that they bring on that site, they've got to cut somewhere else. So when they're done, they cannot they can't push any water off of their property. And our engineering department will ensure that that's the case. Yes, ma'am. They are required by ordinance to do something similar, so we're going to make sure that they do that. If I can borrow you, ma'am, for a second. What are your school times going to be for this?
I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't remember exactly which all the different elementary, middle, they all have different staggering times. and I haven't done an intermediate in a while. So I will find that answer out and get back with you.
Well, my concern is that if you have it in peak hour, so if we go from 7 to 8, if you've got school zone times between 7 and 8, you're going to interfere with all the people who are going to work. But you've got a district-wide policy. It'd be hard for us to say, hey, look, do it for this school differently than you're doing somewhere else. But I think that you don't have a lot of capacity on that road to get in and out of the school, and anything that congests that road is going to shut down traffic. If you're coming in at 7:30 while people are going to work in that subdivision, there's a likelihood that one of y'all is going to block the other.
And we do have start times that they start at 7:30, but I'm not 100% that that's for the intermediate. So again, I'd have to double check that for you. Or I can look it up while y'all are discussing other things and come back to you.
If you could, please, I'd like to kind of have some comfort level to that answer or to that question. With respect to the fire lane access, if I could borrow you again, sir. All right. So there's two ways that access is going to be used. One, the cars may not be able to enter because we have the gates, but that doesn't mean that the people can't cross it. So what we've had, issues we've had at other schools, issues I think we'll have that I'd be concerned with here is that there are going to be some smart parents who say, I'm not waiting that line, I'm coming through the back way, kid, come meet me here. And then you'll have several parents that are congesting that area stacked in that way. I'd like for y'all to try and come up with a creative way to prevent pedestrians from going through there. Could be you have a security guard posted there, and maybe that's something you could coordinate with the district, or you come up with a gate that people can't come through, something of that nature. We want to prevent people from being too creative and misusing what that lane was intended for. That's all I have for now, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Owens.
Yes, sir. A lot of the stuff has been mentioned there, but you're talking about 1,200 kids, and none of them's going to be driving cars to school, but the parents are going to be bringing them. How many kids on a school bus? We've brought all the buses in to bring all 1,200 in. Was that 25, 30 buses to come in and unload and what have you? So there is a concern there of the traffic and the number of people. You have behind, I live on Country Club, and been there since 1990. And I've seen a lot of flooding there and then Golf Crest in that area, but the townhomes behind there gain a lot of water. There's a ditch behind there, and the elevation of that property beyond that is all higher than what the elevation is of the townhomes there. We even recently with CenterPoint doing the work out there that they're doing on that ditch and trying to get the water down through there, it was almost impossible to do it, to be able to do that. So there's going to be a lot of work on that. And everything that you're putting in the detention ponds is going to be going to Clear Creek, which is down below that. And we have problems now on Country Club Drive on heavy rains that the water is up in the yards and you may not have hardly any water in Clear Creek at all. So it's not that, it's getting the water down through there. And that area in there where the townhomes has been there since, early 70s. So they're older and the capacity is not that great for them. But, I'm the only one sitting up here goes back to where that property was there and John Cicero and then was building that property out there. And also, I don't know if it's still there or not, but San Jacinto College had, 10 to 15 acres, I think, that they were going to build a $10 million facility out there as a part of that. And I don't know if that property is still available out there at San Jacinto College or what have you. But I would certainly get in touch with the college to find out. On the roadway on Wexford, I'm not a big fan of that through there, and I think it's been commented before that people before long will come in, and they, instead of sitting in a half a mile of traffic or so, waiting to get your kids and take 45 minutes to an hour to get them, they'll come around Wexler and tell them, hey, jump across over here and get in the car. And so I'm not a big fan of that at all. It becomes that Country Club and Green Tea area is coming through with nothing but a cut through for people coming through. You can still, after I've been there for 20-something years, been out there in my yard and people come in and say, how do I get out of here? You know what I mean? So that's the thing that you really do. But I spent a lot of time before Harvey and other peaks of heavy rain behind the country, you know, the townhomes there, and people calling me down there to take a look, and the back part of their area was being flooded because there's so much difference in the elevation there. And the city has been out there several times to do work out there in that area with that ditch, and nobody really wants to claim it. But it goes all the way from past the golf crest up there all the way down through there. And so that to me is some of the biggest concerns you had, and I don't think the 2 detention ponds are going to take care of it down there in that area. I don't know, you mentioned first of all about the how close it comes to the homes back there, and I think, you know, said something like a iron fence or a chain link fence or something like that. On a few of the break-ins and stuff that we've ever had out there, those people come across that area into Country Club and jump over the back fences of people that have homes up there on further on up. But there was big concern about that. So, you know, in that particular area. But I'm not a big fan of where this school is going, to be honest with you. I don't think it's a good location for it. I think it's, number one, it's too far deep into the subdivision in order to effectively, you know, take care of business there. And it's going to cause a lot of traffic. And I know we're going to have some traffic out of it on Country Club side, but I know that the residents that live out there in that area are going to have a lot more traffic within that they're going to have to live with. So I'm not a big fan of that. I think a lot has been talked about the lighting out there, and so that is a big concern. Coming in and blocking off at Wexford Street, I don't think that's going to help anybody within that area to be able to do that on there. And you know, it's I just think it's personally it's a bad location for it, to be honest with you. And I don't know how many parking places that's going to be available out there. And I think Councilmember Perez brought that up on part of it there. But still, when you have that many kids going to a school there of 1,200, and none of them's going to be driving, there's going to be a lot of parents dropping them off. And, you know, a lot of kids don't want to ride the school bus if they're coming from that neighborhood. They're going to be close enough that they can't ride the school bus. So I don't know if all that's been brought into place, and if you know on there how many parking lot or parking areas are you going to have out there is going to accommodate all the teachers, the instructors there are going to accommodate people to drop kids off and what have you into that area. So, you know, the traffic's just going to be abnormally heavy.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple more questions now. So I don't know if you've got any numbers on how many cars are actually going to be coming in or not, but I was looking at this, and the detention that's on the northwest part, I'm not sure to whom I should direct this question, but I know that there's potential for the underground detention in certain situations. Is that at all feasible to create more capacity for cars in the future? Or I'm trying to think if there's a condition that's placed on this, let's say that, you know, to address the potential stacking on Highland Meadows early on, to try to find some additional capacity now, or to place a condition for in the future that if there is stacking on Highland Meadows that we require more capacity on site. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that now, or if you would be okay with the condition being placed to say that if stacking does occur in the future that it will trigger additional capacity on site. I don't know if either of you would like to respond.
Obviously, the time to make those changes would be now, because we could definitely easily pull down the parking that's already there. That would create more stacking on site. And we can look at that whenever we get with the traffic engineer and whatever recommendations they make and whatever the city wants us to do.
Okay. I mean, if you're open to that, then that would be something just that I would like to see as a condition on here. If you're comfortable with adding additional capacity now, and also with a trigger if stacking does occur for even more capacity in the future.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Reed?
Excuse me, I don't know if you were able to see Councilmember Hernandez. Our engineer's over in the corner, and I thought the site path was kind of blocked, but I think he's got some concerns about underground detention, and I wanted to make sure he had a chance to address that before you try to make it a condition of this permit.
Oh, yeah, and so she alleviated that by saying they could push it down, so it was just a question, but I think she addressed it with her comments, but if you'd like to address it, Robert, feel free.
Councilman Hernandez, with regards to the drainage, and of course, is that our staff, the review staff, working with the engineers and design criteria manuals that the city has, will continue to comply with those. With regards to underground detention, we don't always have a lot of rules, and that's still, I will say, experimental for us in terms of how we handle that and how the water is stored and then removed from those underground detention facilities. So those are things that we're still exploring that may be out in the industry, but is new to our regulations and our exploration of that type of storage capacity. So while I understand the council's desire to be able to try and plan that for traffic, I will say as I defer to my review staff, to my review team, and as they go through, and also to the engineers and the architects that are working on this project, to be able to make sure that they still have the flexibility to be able to do what is necessary to meet the traffic requirements, meet the current drainage and detention requirements without putting them too far down into a box. But we're always looking for new ideas, and we like to explore those, but just want to make sure that you're aware of where we stand in our review criteria at this time.
Okay. Councilman Reed?
So you mentioned the eminent domain process, and you know, I know that's going to take you a while, right? And so it's not going to be quick. Let me ask staff, how soon would something like this, or how soon if we postponed it, would this be able to come back to like our next JPH? Next month, September?
The next joint special meeting is on August 5th.
Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because, you know, obviously, like I said, you all purchased the land and whatnot, but it doesn't sound like you mentioned a lot of conversations with the city and no conversations with anybody in here or any of their representatives. I'm sure that they wouldn't mind having a representative or two at these conversations to be able to give you this feedback. Obviously, if it's denied here today or in August, I mean, you got to go through a long eminent domain process. So you delay your project. You know, there's a lot of things on this that need to be addressed. You know, drainage is obviously important. No one wants to see anybody's home in here flood. And so, you know, these two detention ponds, you know, may or may not be sufficient. But, you know, I don't know if you've provided a drainage study to anyone in this crowd, right? It sounds like no conversations have taken place with these folks, correct? And so in my opinion, I think that would probably be the best route. Drainage is one, and then lighting seems like another issue. But I think drainage is probably one of the most important issues because we never know what's going to happen or when it's going to be our next big rain. Lighting specifically, you know, I know there was mention of, you know, not having high lighting, but you have a scoreboard on this, you know, on this drawing, future scoreboard, which is going to, you know, be a huge lighting. I mean, maybe it could be put somewhere else, but it's little things like that that I know if, you know, they had one or two representatives come and maybe sit down with you all a couple times before the next time that it was put on an agenda, we could have a lot of things solved and not really have this back and forth. I don't know what would happen here today if we voted on it, but again, like I said, the eminent domain process is not short. So I don't, there's obviously we're just in discussion and whatnot. So, but when it comes up, you know, I'll probably be making a motion to postpone.
And we're more than happy to talk with whomever. It's just we don't usually have direct access to, you know, the HOA. And we did talk to the developer some time ago once we realized that we also had some issues with some accessing the drives and some restricted reserves and things of that nature. So that's when we really started opening up more of the conversation. But I guess we didn't want to get too far down the road with the community not knowing exactly what the city was going to, like how you guys kind of work, because we don't work with you guys a whole lot. But we will do whatever it takes. We can have whatever meetings. We can have our whole entire AE team there. So that way, I mean, we can have all the different representatives. So I can have the electrical engineer, civil engineer, everybody like in the room. So when you ask a question, we have all the answers right then and there.
But you need the residents in the room, right?
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. I
Not
just need to know-
everybody here, but, you know, I'm sure, like I said, they can come together and decide on, you know, a few folks that can represent their interests.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. But I just need to know what avenue, who I should go through, whether if it's because I have reached out to the Riverstone Ranch HOA with the developer, and we were attempting to have something on site, and then they mentioned that it wasn't fully developed out, so that they still hold the primary interest, the developer themselves. And then I just sent something out to the Green Tea HOA, basically saying the same thing. I mean, we'll come to you. We can, you know, whoever has concerns, we'll come and, you know, do whatever needs to be done to help squash any concerns that people do have.
I would start with the biggest guy in the crowd, Mr. Bakken. I think he can, you know, I think he should be able to direct you where to go. And yeah, I think someone over there would be able to help, and Lance might be able to kind of direct you.
Okay, we'll do.
Okay. Let's move to item C, which will let staff do a wrap-up comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So there were just a couple things that I heard during the discussion that I want to discuss and educate a little further. First of all, there was a discussion about school district boundaries. I'd like to point out that Pasadena ISD has their boundary along the Centerpoint easement. So as shown on the map, Green Tea, yes please. Green Tea is within Pearland ISD, and the Riverstone Ranch is within Pasadena ISD. So those school children would be going to two separate school systems. Next was about the right-of-way of Highland Meadows Drive. As measured on our GIS, it's a 60-foot right-of-way with a 36-foot wide paved area. Then one thing to point out and keep in mind for other projects that have had similar large detention ponds and that had a mix of younger children involved. We've included safety ledges for those areas. That may be a good design feature to be installed if they can make their detention capacity still work. On top of the fencing as well, just an additional layer of protection and security for that design feature. I will hand it off to engineering, as I think they had I handled all the engineering questions. That's a good day. So that finishes our staff wrap-up. Thank you, sir.
And could I note the arrival and dismissal times? It's 8:10 and 3:30.
So school begins at 8:10?
Yes, sir.
So school zone starts at about
I don't know,
7:45?
or usually about an hour and a half. I mean, an hour almost.
Okay, so buses will be coming in at about 7:30?
Yes.
Correct.
But that can also be discussed which, from what I understand, where they're currently at, they only have like 5 buses. And again, but the capacity for the 1,200 is at max capacity. Right now, they've got like 750 students.
Fair enough, but I don't know a school that within short order, certainly within a few years, is not over capacity.
Yes, sir.
So You wouldn't be building this if you had capacity other places, so.
Exactly.
And that's the district policy that you have, that all intermediate schools go from, or drop off at 8:10?
That's something I think that as the person that kind of controls all that, I'm going back and forth. They're mentioning that the arrival time is in waves, so it's usually not a problem. But again, if it becomes a, but if it becomes a problem, I mean, that's definitely something I'm sure that we could.
My concern is this, the solution to that is widening the roads, multiple. That's a tough thing for us to enforce on you after you've gotten a certificate of occupancy. Robert, can I? Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilman Perez.
We've reviewed the TIA.
Councilman Perez, as the applicant stated earlier, is that we are meeting again in about a week and a half with them to basically review and do the TIA with all the concerns that we have from the current submission in that came prior to this meeting.
And we also have had campuses that have staggered arrivals or not so much arrival, but I'd say more dismissal. As far as for different areas or different groups, they're dismissed at a different time, so that way it kind of does alleviate that when they're let
I'll
out.
tell you this, I'm going to let Robert and his team deal with it because I've got concerns, regardless of whether I have some expertise in this area. I think that I want to allow them the flexibility to do what needs to be done. It is a concern.
Yes, sir.
I hope that your traffic engineer comes up with a reasonable solution. I hope that the district is willing to acquiesce to maybe some improvements to the roadway if we need it for throat capacity.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for providing that information.
Thank you.
Was there, I got one other question. Y'all got a, what is it, elementary school right there on the?
Yes, sir.
frontage
Southbelt
road?
Elementary.
And there's not any additional land left to build at that site?
I was told that originally when they were trying to do a swap with the land, there was something that was more near Malillo available. But again, I guess attempts to agree on what that would have been was either getting too far outside of what the district had budgeted. So it was getting too high in cost for what we already had purchased. And again, that was already purchased when they started trying to do some wheeling and dealing with whomever else.
Okay.
But I would say right near Riverstone Ranch, again, it's whatever is available or who's bought up or the developer agreeing or disagreeing to relocate.
Yeah, it just seemed like, if there was land available, it'd be probably a lot less costly to build it at that location because it's right by all the detention areas built in, the capacity. And I was driving through there during Harvey, and it was carrying the capacity of water pretty strong and pretty well.
Yes, sir.
In that area there. So, but it just seemed like it'd be better to have it in the front end of the development there. To people are easy to go in and get out.
Right.
And drop off kids at those areas. So I just wondered if you had a land to do it there or not.
No, sir.
Has staff completed wrap-up comments?
I just wanted to add that Pasadena Intermediate School's hours fluctuate from opening as early as 7:15 to as late as 8:40. So I think there is some room to play with, and that's one of the things y'all can talk about and we can look at as you move forward.
Okay. This is a joint special meeting which has specific requirements in which we have let the staff introduce the version. The city council has called upon the audience and also the developer to get input. And we're to the point now where in this process, the discussion we had now morphs into a city council new business item in which we have a complete city council addressing the issue. So let me And I had asked Councilman Little if he would present this as a city council new business item for our consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action resolution number R 2019-CUP 19-00009. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And
Mayor,
discussion.
Mayor, I'd like to add some amendments to the motion.
Okay.
I'd like to amend the motion to include the following items. One, that we have no field lighting on the property. One, that we have no more than 1 foot candle intensity of lighting at any of the property lines. We have provisions for a special event parking in accordance with a traffic study that is justified by similar events at similar sized facilities. We want no pedestrian access onto Green Tea through the gates. We also want no foot traffic, no pedestrian access into Green Tea through that south property line. And we'd also like y'all to work with our staff to ensure that there is a trigger for y'all to create additional stacking of your queue internal to the site if there is queuing that pours into the street. And those are all of
And that is your motion?
Those are the amendments that I would like.
Was your amendment? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have an amendment and a second. Amend the motion.
Councilmember Perez, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Motion to amend passed. Oh. Councilmember Moore, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion to amend 6-0.
How did it come out?
6-0.
Okay, we have an amended motion.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to postpone under the condition that the developer meet or have a town hall type meeting with the residents, so you can kind of hear their concerns and actually act on their concerns. Hopefully, you come to some type of agreement.
Second.
We have an amended motion.
No.
Amended. This is a postponing motion.
Okay. Motion to postpone.
We have an amended motion, and now we've got a postponing motion.
Okay. Motion to postpone. Councilmember Reed, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Little?
Aye.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Aye.
Councilmember Moore?
You remembered this time. Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Councilmember Owens?
Aye.
Councilmember Orlando?
Aye.
Motion to postpone 7-0.
So we have an amended motion to postpone the action.
We have a motion to postpone the amended motion to the motion.
Motion to amend, to postpone. Okay, the action is to postpone this.
Does that make sense to y'all? Okay. So the conditions are live. You still have to meet those conditions. After you have the public hearing, you can come back.
Which has been agreed to by 7 votes. Any further comment from staff on this item about?
So the postponement will be for the next joint special meeting, which is right now.
Until they meet the criteria. So once they
say indefinitely. Okay.
So it's just off the table now.
Okay.
Okay. We have a postponed motion. Did you take a vote on that?
Yes.
We've had several votes. We'll make sure we're voting on the right motion. It's wound up that the council has decided to postpone this to a future date, and we'll set that at a later date at some point. So, thank all of you for being here. We'll do this again. I'm going to adjourn this series of joint special meeting at 8:05. Would the council come back to order here? Moving back to the original item we had for tonight, was a joint public hearing, Monday, July the 15th, 2019. I may call to order this particular joint public hearing and ask the chairman of the planning commission to read into the record the purpose of the hearing tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. The purposes for amendments to the Unified Development Code UDC number T30. This is a request of the City of Pearland for proposed amendments to Unified Development Code regarding the following sections. 1, reformatting the land use table, definitions and off-street parking requirements of land use matrix, section 2.5.2.1. Item 2, new regulations for patio cover setbacks within the rear yards of residential lots, section 2.6.1.1F, area and building regulations. Item 3, removal of parking lot prohibition within the front yard of the Old Townsite District, section 2.4.3.4 OT, Old Townsite District. Item 4, new regulations for LED lighting on signage and storefront, section 2.4.5.1, corridors overlay district, section 2.6.2.1, applicability and requirements, and section 4.2.5.1, general standards and requirements. And item number 5, removal of dumpster screening and sidewalk requirements upon expansion of parking lot pavement and separation of landscape requirements for street trees and parking lot trees based on the type of expansion, section 4.1.3.2, improvements and related triggers.
That completes your report.
Yes, sir.
Moving to item 3 on our agenda, application information case summary, staff report.
Sir, thank you. So basically those 5 items are what I'm going to go over. We tried really hard to distill them down into their most basic elements to make the Unified Development Code as easy to amend as possible. So let's dive right in. The land use table that was within your packet, we completely removed all 94 pages and just proposed the 20 or so pages of new text for the land use table. I've provided you some information here about all the specifics of what we did. By removing the definitions from each of the land use types and putting that into Chapter 5 where the remainder of the definitions are, and then removed the parking ratios and moved those to Chapter 4 where we already have a section for parking. Each of those would be a great amount of slidage to go through and to show you where each one's moved to. So I wanted to show you what the final product looks like. This is a distilled view of what the land use table would look like. Once we remove all the red out of it, it'll be nice and black and white and simple to scroll down and easy to find what zoning district you're in, see what type of land uses are readily available for you to be permitted by right or permitted by conditional use or just plain aren't allowed within your zoning district. And those people may need to seek a new zoning classification for the property if the use that they are wanting to do isn't allowed. So we think that we've hit a major win with that amendment. Number 2 comes to patio covers within residential developments and single-family residential houses. We've seen a good number over the past 2 years of variances going to the Zoning Board of Adjustments, seeking approval of attached overhangs to their residence. As you know, people want to be able to utilize all of their property. And typically we try to maintain at least a 20-foot setback from the rear property yard before we allow any sort of encroachment. However, we do allow for detached structures to be built in the backyard, And a patio cover can be a detached structure. So typically you wind up with people having 6 inches to a foot where they're offsetting that patio cover before and not attaching it to the roof, but having that as an offset structure from their main property. We want to create a rule that allows them to utilize their existing roof form and encroach into that rear yard, provided that they're not enclosing it and that they're not encroaching into any easements that may be on the property. This slide provides you some information about all of the residential rear setbacks. As you can see, they're generally 20 foot. RE has a 25 foot. Multifamily has a 25 foot, and townhouse and mobile home have a 10 foot. I did want to make a consideration for the other types of rear setbacks where we have enhancements. Throughout the code, we make considerations for thoroughfares or collector streets, and then considerations for landscape reserves and alleys. But I didn't want to make this table too confusing. So first line is what the required rear setback is. Second line is what 50% of that would be. For parking in Old Town site, we recognize that there are some developments that are coming in that would like to be able to put some parking in the front yard to make their project a little more feasible. Currently, parking is prohibited within the front yard throughout all of the Old Town districts, whether it's Old Town residential, Old Town mixed use, or Old Town general business. It is just not allowed at all. With this proposal, it would allow for parking to be within the front yard, provided that they maintain a 25-foot buffer if their property faces out onto Broadway or Main, and then a 15-foot landscape strip along all other roads. We thought this was a good compromise between the two sets of codes to try and allow some different types of development to go through in there. For LED lighting, which is number 4 on our list, we had a previous UDC text amendment which talked about light strips. And typically when someone's looking through the code, they're doing a keyword search for LEDs. So we wanted to beef up our requirements and actually use the language that most people would put in there. So this proposes to not allow light strips or LED strips within the facade requirements for Chapter 2 within Corridor Overlay District, which is also in Chapter 2, and then it adds LED strips into Chapter 4 within signage. And the last amendment that we're bringing forward is about the triggers table and we're not requiring dumpster screening or sidewalks for expansion of paved surface, and then adding in an 8th criteria for parking lot landscaping to only be required when there's additional parking lot or parking being added. And that gets added to the expansion of paved area over 5,000 square foot and the cumulative expansion of a building more than 15% with a minimum 500 square foot addition. And that quickly wraps up all 5 of the proposed amendments. We are working still on going through the rest of the list of amendments that were proposed from the Unified Development Code Committee that finalized their report in March. So we will be bringing those edits and having further discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission in the following months, and then we'll come back with another round of edits when we have a good batch after discussing with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that completes our staff report.
Staff has just completed their report and have done a wrap-up on it. Moving to item 4, persons wish to speak for or against the proposed request as presented.
Is there anyone that would wish to speak for or against this resolution? Second time, anyone wishing to speak for or against it? Third and final time? None of the three of you out there in the audience want to speak for or against it?
Okay, thank you so much. Moving to item number 5, which is an opportunity for the City Council, the Planning Commission, and the staff to discuss the issues that were presented by the staff just previously. Moving in the order in which they are indicated, City Council, starting with Councilmember Owens.
I don't have any questions right now, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank all those that served on the committee with me, former member Arbone and member Hernandez. Worked for quite a while to come up with these amendments along with staff, member of EDC. So obviously I'm in support of these changes, but I think.
Councilmember Moore.
No comment, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm very happy with these as well. Especially, I've been waiting for these, the LED language, especially for quite some time. So thank you for all the hard work.
All right. Councilmember Little.
Just for clarification, on parking in the front yard in the Old Town site, on Broadway or Main, you have to have a 25-foot landscape buffer. That's 25 feet deep. And is that, a lot of these yards are fairly small in that area of town. Am I understanding that correctly? If they want to pull off their driveway and park in their front yard, they have to have a 25-foot landscape buffer?
Correct. That is what we're proposing. 25-foot matches with the water sewer easement that is typically found, and we're trying to not put new features or new hard surfaces within that water sewer easement, so it's a little easier to maintain. So that's why we chose to keep it with the 25-foot.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Little, you just completed. Councilmember Reed.
No comment, Mayor. Thank you.
And Councilmember Rolando.
Nothing from me, Mayor.
Okay. Moving to the Planning Commission, Mr. Chairman.
Troy, do you have any comments? Any? Mary?
I don't have anything at this time.
I guess the only comment I have is on the LED portion. Is the language strong enough and detailed enough for a prohibition of these items, whether it be LED lights or string lights or any type of external lighting around doors and windows?
I think the language is pretty good, but I will throw it back to Lawrence and see if he agrees with me.
Okay, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
That's all? Okay. Staff wrap-up comments, discussion?
Nothing further.
Okay. Item 6 will let me adjourn this particular public hearing, joint public hearing, which I shall do at 8:25.